And ABC 15 is going in-depth tonight. They are the worst of the worst cases. Kids who came forward to say they were molested, but were ignored.
As ABC 15 investigator Christina Boomer uncovered, detectives neither bothered to talk to the children, interview witnesses, or even go after their attackers.
This is a story about victims who have never seen justice and detectives who were never held accountable. An estimated 400 sex crime cases countywide.
There was cases that maybe weren't worked.
It was obvious that there's something could have been done. These weren't vague reports.
Behind all these stacks of paper are people, children, some as young as 3, another child only 2, all who said they were molested. They lived in El Mirage at a time when the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office was handling the city's sex crimes cases.
The community ending its contract, saying it wants its own police force.
October of 2007, El Mirage began to build its own department. They reviewed MCSO's case files and discovered that dozens of sex crimes in their city hadn't been worked. The El Mirage police called MCSO to say, in very blunt terms, hey, what I got was a bunch of crap. For the first time, you are seeing what he saw. Take this case from August of 2007. A 2-year-old is taken to the hospital due to vaginal pain, bruises, and signs of molestation. She had been with a male babysitter that day with a history of self-proclaimed child molesting. The case goes to MCSO's Special Victims Unit, but the document states the case was not worked. We found similar stories, page after page.
So we were left with taking that time, going through and trying to contact victims, witnesses, to see if any of the cases were solvable.
El Mirage Police Detective Robert Peoples specializes in child sex crime cases. He says when El Mirage detectives tried to follow up, many of the victims couldn't be found. It's exactly what we ran into. We tried to track down more than a dozen victims. This is an example of what we found. No one is home. The family who lived here has moved away. For example, in one case, a mother calls to say that her husband has repeatedly molested her 3-year-old daughter. She also says he admitted to doing it. The case is given to MCSO SVU. Apparently no work is done. El Mirage police say when they tried to follow up with the victim, they found her home was vacant.
These people were victimized in a really deep, intimate, and violating way, and then were re-victimized when the system ignored them.
Elizabeth Ditlevson is the deputy director for the Arizona Coalition Against Domestic Violence.
I think the things I thought were especially egregious were, one, when I read that letter.
This is that letter. In 2008, the El Mirage police chief wrote to Sheriff Joe Arpaio, calling attention to MCSO's failure to work the cases. He explains how many of the cases had known suspects. More than 90% had workable leads, and the majority involved small children and young teens. He said 43 of the 51 reports had not been worked at all or had minimal follow-up conducted.
I mean, that's hard to hear.
The letter sparked an MCSO internal affairs investigation, and that's when it became clear the problem was much bigger. The failure to investigate sex crimes cases didn't just affect El Mirage, it was countywide. MCSO needed to reopen more than 400 cases. Investigators learned one detective took a box of 50 or 60 cases home to his garage, where they sat for about a year. Other case files were just lost.
Not the way the system should be working.
If you were wondering who was in charge of the sex crimes unit, it was this woman, Kim Seagraves. Her personnel file shows how Sergeant Seagraves, now Lieutenant Seagraves, was never held accountable for how she ran the sex crimes unit. Her boss, Chief Deputy David Hendershot, shut down the internal affairs investigation before it was completed.
Victims were left unattended, and perpetrators who may be reoffending are still out there because of internal politics is deeply concerning.
Meaning no justice for a 16-year-old girl who said she was forcibly raped by a 30-year-old male. The report says she knew who did it. MCSO even showed up to the hospital and took her clothes into custody. And yet no one worked the case.
It is hard. I mean, because I deal with the kids all the time. What happened in the past, we really can't fix that.
But El Mirage Detective Peoples is still hopeful that there can be justice for some of these children and their families.
If there are still victims out there, it's time for them to come forward and come talk to us and let us try to get some resolution for those victims.
We checked with the county attorney's office, who told us there is no statute of limitations for child sex crimes, sexual assault, and violent sexual assault. We did reach out to MCSO and Lieutenant Kim Seagray's attorney for comment, but have not heard back. Meantime, we've also uncovered that MCSO didn't just fail to investigate. One employee is accused of going a step further and clearing the cases. I'll be bringing you more on that story Monday night at 10 p.m. Christina Boomer, ABC 15 News.